Hello, welcome to Australia and welcome to Australian Book Travels. Welcome wherever you are in the world. Right, so this morning I wanted for our book recommendations and book reviews, there are a couple of really old books, not classics, but they are old books that I want to recommend to you. And as I understand it, they are still available, or one of them is at least, and a couple of Australian authors as well. So I'll dip into these first. The first one I want to recommend is a book that I read between the ages of about 12 to 14. I can't remember why I read it. It may have been a requirement at school, or it may have been that I went into a bookshop and thought that it looked interesting. Either way, I read it. It is Virginia Axline's Dibs in Search of Self. Now, Virginia, who has since passed away, I think she passed away in the 80s, she was a psychoanalyst or a psychologist in America. And Dibs in Search of Self is a true story about one of her clients, a young 5-year-old boy in America, Dibs, who came from a wealthy, educated family, who was non-communicative, antisocial, and just incredibly withdrawn. Now, this was written in the 1960s, so it was incredibly revolutionary for its time. Things have progressed beyond incredible now, but in terms of realising that children, everyone, suffers trauma or suffers some antisocial behaviour or a emotional turmoil. But in the 60s, this was incredibly revolutionary. I read it in the late 70s, very early 80s, and it was revolutionary then. I'm recommending it to you today because it's still relevant. It's incredibly relevant. It's just in a different format or a different perspective that we would have on it. But when I read it, I found it incredibly thought-provoking and emotional as a 12 to 14-year-old. So Dibs is a young 5-year-old in America, the product of a wealthy, well-educated family, and has these issues. Virginia spends a year with him, and this is the chronicles of that year, using, again, a revolutionary concept of play therapy to assist him in becoming self-aware, self-loved, and socially aware. I recommend it. I know you can still get it. It is still published, certainly in Australian bookshops. I know, as I say, it has a different idea or perspective now, but still very relevant. I recommend it. And perhaps when you do read it, understand that it was even more revolutionary for the 60s than what it is today. It's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful story. I recommend it. So that's one. The second one is by Pullein-Thompson, who's English. I read these between the ages of 8 and maybe 13, 14. They are lovely stories. This one's the first Rosette. She has a whole series of them. So there's For Want of a Saddle, The Second Mount, I think. There's about 6 or 8 of them. No, there are probably 8 of them, 8 to 10 of them. They are a wonderful read for any age, truly. They're gentle. They're based in probably the 50s and the 60s. They're various stories of children or young adults who are not only crazy about their horses, but village life and school and social interactions with their family and friends. I recommend them. I think they're a lovely book. I'm not too sure that you can get these anymore, but certainly perhaps in second-hand bookstores they may be able to get you a copy if you put your name on a list, or perhaps try online. They should be around. So I recommend that. Now the Australian books I recommend, I absolutely love Kate Morton. She's an Australian writer. She does spend a bit of time in England, and I know she researches her books in England, the places that she names in the books she researches in England. But she is an Australian writer, and some of her stories have a connection to Australia in some format. Now this is a very old one. This is The Lake House, but she has about 8 now, I think. There's The Forgotten Garden and a couple of others that I can't recall right now. But look, they are lovely. They are often in a double timeline, so they have an historical aspect to them. The story may have begun in 1923, but there is a discovery from that time. There is a discovery in more recent times, so in the 2000s. I don't think they're any earlier than that. I think she flips from one era to the 2000s, I think. But they are a lovely read. They are well written. They are often around 600 pages. So not a quick read, but they are a lovely read. There are often stories or tales of love. There's mystery. Because they flick between those two timelines, there is a mystery that needs to be solved. And look, they really are lovely. Now, Kate this year brought out her latest, and of course, being a Kate Morton lover, I grabbed it as soon as I could. As I think the day it came out on the shelves, I grabbed it. I really enjoyed this story. It is based in Australia with an English connection. Again, it goes back in time. I won't tell you the story, but something happens in, I think it was the 50s in Australia. Then you find yourself in the current day in England, and then the central protagonist, the female protagonist, is drawn out to Australia for a reason. Now, I really enjoyed this. There are, as much as I love Kate, I really do. She is my favourite Australian author, or one of my favourite Australian authors. But I must say, for an Australian author with an Australian storyline, there was 2 things that I was perhaps a little disappointed in. Through the book, it was glaringly obvious to me, because I really enjoy Kate and because it's an Australian story, Australian author. There were some Americanised spelling in here, and there was a reference to an American terminology, but it was used in Australian format. And I'll tell you what that is. It was, and I can't find it in there so quickly. I should have had it tagged for you. But the story is set the main story is set in Australia in the 50s, and Kate refers to candy. Now, in all my time in living in Australia, in the 60s and 70s, 80s, we've never referred to our sweets or lollies as candy. So that was glaringly obvious, and I was just fractionally disappointed. I don't know why that happened. Perhaps somebody could tell me. But considering that it was published here, I think in the front of the book I noticed it was published here, and it was certainly printed here in Australia. But if somebody could enlighten me as to why that occurred, that was the only thing I can say. I was just fractionally disappointed. I will still always love Kate. I will still read her books, but I'm very much aware it was very obvious whilst reading. So that's the only thing. But I do love Kate and I recommend her. I think her books are fantastic. That is that. Now, the last one I'd like to show you is an Australian author, Michelle Crawford. This is titled A Table in the Orchard, My Delicious Life. It is a cookbook, but it is also, throughout it, Michelle has tales of her life in Tasmania, Australia. And we will visit Tasmania. We will be going to bookshops down there, and perhaps we'll even try and see where Michelle is, or, you know, in the general vicinity. But yes, so she chronicles her life in Tasmania and her life on land. So she grows food and bakes it. So I'll just show you some photos. It is beautiful. The photos are absolutely gorgeous. I'll just show you that there. And, you know, there you go. There's some there. Down to the river, I think that's called, isn't it? Yes, down to the river. But throughout it, she does give recipes. I will show you. I think she has bees too, from recollection. But so she has some recipes there. It's a lovely book. Again, this is a few years old. It is one that I use regularly and read. You don't have to read it in one sitting. You can just flick through a chapter and read a chapter. Michelle has written it in that way that it's put downable, pick upable, put downable, so forth. So it is lovely. It is a few years old. I'm sure you'll still be able to get it. I will put a link to all of these books or to the authors in the description box below. But yes, I recommend this one. It is a staple in my kitchen also. So that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it and that in some way it has either informed you or entertained you. I didn't have to put my glasses on this time, which was good. So please do like and subscribe if you find these videos informative. We will be travelling more in the coming weeks. Around about Christmas time, I think I will just be concentrating on book reviews. Christmas time is a difficult time for us to move around because it is our summer, and we are concerned about fires in the area, so we like to stay close to home. We may do some little day trips locally, but we won't be travelling too far. So for today, I wish you good health and much happiness. I do hope you're well, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.